Hi everyone, welcome to Game On with GANEMO. My name is Abhinav. I'm a director at GANEMO Group, and I'm with Randeep from Be Sociable.
Yes, so I'm Randeep Vassal from Be Sociable. I'm the founder and the CEO for the business.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
So what we're hoping to do today is sort of go into a little bit of detail on how you got to where you are, a background where you started, and I guess, you know, what real challenges you've had to face trying to get this thing off the ground and where you're at now.
Sure. So, Abs, the journey of Be Sociable started about 12 months ago when the concept triggered in my mind where we were looking to evolve a concept which simplifies the way people interact in the social world. Early March last year, I started looking at some options. The concept was quite clear in my head, but of course it had to be drawn in paper and brought it to the market. I engaged a few companies, including GANEMO, at that point in time to give us some pricing of how and what it looks like in order to get this concept into a real-time product. Of course, after the due diligence, I came up to a conclusion that it's better to be done offshore. Reason because cost being a big factor, and Be Sociable is an app which I've developed out of pocket, and it's very important for us to be mindful of what we are spending as a startup. Whilst I was working in a full-time role at the time, I started the development of the app. The company is based out of Sydney, however, their development team is offshore. Yes, it's presented a few challenges, which I'll probably touch base shortly, but one of the biggest factors was to go offshore was cost. I understand the challenges which come up. One of the biggest trouble was communication, still is, and having to trial and test everything, but that's probably the nature of a startup also.
When you started, you would have been on a pretty decent salary in a full-time job, and you've decided, well, I'm going to dump all that, and I'm going to put my own money, hundreds of thousands potentially, into building this thing. And like, you've got a family, you've got dependents, so like, what kind of thought process goes through to say, there's that big pool of money, I'm going to give that up and I'm going to put my life savings into this?
Correct. So that was definitely all of the above. I spent 17 years in the technology industry, and I've moved from India to UK to now in Australia. For the last 9 years, I've been working as head of IT for many companies, including mining, construction, manufacturing. And yes, I was earning very well. I was in the region of, if you look at all-in costs, you're talking about $250,000 takeaway. And from $250,000, kids going to private schools and moving into a self-employment startup, which is a concept I've trialed and tested, but I haven't really lobbied with the real market. It was a big risk, absolutely was, but I'm a big believer of nothing grows in comfort. So you've got to step up. If you believe in something, of course, you've got to trial and test it, do the due diligence, not just willy-nilly go into it with blindfolds. No, I did trial and test this concept of Be Sociable with the market, with I should say, emotional users, predominantly around, real people who had no interest in what I do, how I do, as far as the business makes money. So it did come up with a good feedback. It did lobby that this has got potential to grow. And again, timing is very important. One of the key things I've learned is timing. And towards the end, I'm talking about end of March, is when I exited. But by that time, I had the app developed. I had nailed down how the next 18 to 24 months will look like, even if I'm sitting at home and kids are going to private schools.
Right.
Wife has a different problem with driving BMs, but that's not my problem. We've got to give that up, which is okay with that.
Yeah, right. So at the point where you decided to actually leave the job, you had the prototype built?
Correct, I did, yes.
Wow, okay.
I exited at the time I had a prototype. And that's, I think, a key thing for anyone who's doing a startup. Yes, if you are investing or if you're getting some seed capitalization invested into it, it's very important to be able to sustain. And a very good friend of mine gave me an advice: don't run into debt. So it's still in my head.
Yeah, right.
Luckily, which is
so you were able to manage your time to be able to do a full-time job, plus get a prototype built and not go into debt.
Correct. At that point in time, yes.
Wow. Okay.
So it did, as I said, it did take a lot of courage. I have to admit, a lot of thought process, and my wife's been supportive of all the decisions we've made together.
So that's the next question. Like, I was just wondering, like, was it hard to convince the family that, yep, I want to do this? Do you guys understand what that means? Let's go for it.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to convince because my wife and I do talk about everything and anything, and our kids are still young in that space, but we do run by whatever we do together. They were just excited about the fact that Dad's going to be home for a little while, so it was quite nice. But no, my wife and I were convinced, and this product I've been working as a concept for nearly 6 years, and it's one of those things I haven't given up on the dream, or I never did, I never will. And it's just a determination, we're not going to stop. And now we're at a stage where, yes, we have exited everything we did from a 9-to-5 job. And now I'm full-time focused purely on the product, getting the last bits and pieces ready and starting the marketing off as soon as possible too.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So when, I guess, at this stage where you're getting the prototype built, what level of understanding did you have on the technology or the IT piece of it? Did you just direct it from a business perspective, saying this is roughly what I want? How did you get that comfort level with technology? Or did you already have that in-depth understanding of exactly how this will be built?
No, look, one of the drawbacks for Be Sociable, or has been to date, is the lack of a technical lead. And I'm a technical person, but more the traditional networking and Microsoft perspective. I mean, I transitioned more into management 10 to 12 years ago, fully into management, more documents, business cases, Excel docs became my bread and butter, and how the design works of the architectural side of the world. Be Sociable was more of a challenge, I could say, not knowing what the app world does, to develop something which I was not 100% confident about or comfortable about, and not having that someone who is bought into this, much like I was from a fiscal side, technology side, it was a challenge. So I really had to take I had to do research, of course, of what's up in the market, trends, and how the market is evolving. And on top of that was the fact I had to take guidance from the partners I chose.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So, and did you have any strong technical partners, or what kind of guidance did they give you?
The team I engage with is out of Sydney. The design, as in the UX and UI, was done in Sydney, but the development is done offshore.
Sure.
So I do interact with them once a week to keep on top of things. But what really I did over the last 12 months of the development journey was I kind of sat on top of the development and how it was tracking. So I became the UAT expert as well through this process. You know, I made them, so from my previous experience, of course, brings a little bit of project management sort of things too as well. So I made them articulate the milestones the way I wanted to see. But then I sat on top of the development team and the team out in Sydney as well to see how we are tracking, and I was doing the bug fixing, everything by myself.
Yeah, sure.
So my office does look like at the moment like a mobile shop from time to time.
Yeah,
but that's
sure.
part of the game.
Now that you've got something built, do you have confidence that it will scale, that it will meet? Let's say, you know, Be Sociable does really well, and you've got hundreds, 200,000 people using the app. Do you think it will hold up? Do you have exposure to the back-end architecture?
Sure. Yes. Look, we did scale to that extent, yes. I am targeting up to 2 million, 2.5 million people, active users, to be using the app. So we have scaled it to that extent. But of course, with time, as the numbers grow, we will need to relook at our technology and what we're doing and how we've been doing things. But if that means starting again, so be it. We'll start again. I mean, that's not something which I'm worried about or scared at this point in time about. We have to evolve, so we got to cater for the market right now and what we can afford. So it's a combination of both. I mean, I didn't want any investment to be going out of use in 6 months' time, but I didn't want to, you know, invest in not being able to use that within 6 months either. So it's a balance of both. So the current app has given us, or will give us, the enablement to about 2.5 million users. And once we scale above, again, Be Sociable as a product is not going to stop evolving. It's going to change, and it's going to change the background. So what we mean by change is we don't change what we do, it's the background. So from a user experience perspective, things will be the same, always. It's simplification. However, in terms of the back end, what we can take, the servers we use, the technology we use, that'll evolve with time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I guess in terms of the overall cost of the offshoring exercise, obviously you got local estimates including from us.
Yes.
What was the percentage of the total offshore cost to what you would have paid if you had it done here?
Look, the pricing was, as I said at the time, was a big challenge because it was out-of-pocket expense, and it wasn't a cheap one. The total cost I ended up developing the app itself today is $150,000. Compared to the best price I got onshore was 180. But I'll have to admit the 150 includes a lot of changes, a lot of RFCs that we had to bring in to suit the commercial side of the business as well. So we have made a few amendments. If we had gone all in at that point in time, we're looking at about 110,000 all in. But with amendments, we're looking at about 150K as a cost. Well, then on top of that, you've got to add on my cost, running cost, business cost. So it all adds up.
Yep, sure. So I guess if we were to say, let's say you were to do it over, was it still a good idea to offshore? Would you have gone local, like considering the R&D grant, which I'm not sure. I think you can possibly get some of it.
Yes.
So if you were to do it over, would you do it the same way? Would you do anything
If
different?
I were to do it over, I'd probably consider definitely getting it done in Australia.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And what would have been the main reason for that?
The main reason is timelines, and the main reason is the communication side of the world. Because timelines, it has slipped. Purely, I think it's the way people work in different parts of the world. And timelines, I could have launched this app, I believe, if this was being done in Australia 4 to 6 months ago. Because the original timeline was January this year, which has stretched to now June. The app is now live, but I could have done this 6 months ago.
Yeah, sure, fair enough.
And again, on top of that is the sitting on top, my time. Yes, I was working full time, but you finish work, if you have a dream again, you go back home and you put your computer on again. So kids are in bed and I'm back on the computer. So that's how it was kind of being juggling through for about 12 months, and now to a stage where I'm full-time into it.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess now that you've gotten this far and you've got something and you've got some form of a team offshore, how do you see the next 12 months going? Will this team be able to deliver everything you need? Will you be looking for a local tech expert to sort of at least take the reins here locally, or will you just say, okay, we'll keep running it the way we've run it and try to grow as far as we can?
Yep. Look, at this stage, Abs, as a business, now I'm driving the business as well as the technology side of things. I'm now talking to different, like a typical startup. I'm looking at investing or getting invested into through venture capitalists, or even getting into a incubator to get that assistance to drive this business to the next level it belongs. So I'm applying at different places. And in terms of the long-term growth, of course, I will be looking to transition this onshore relatively soon. That's one of my key gaps that I have identified, and so has the market, in terms of bridging that gap where somebody local is leading that technology for Be Sociable.
So that local, I guess, person that you get, given where you're at right now, you've got all this development done, you've got an offshore team. It's not like you can suddenly just bring everything local.
Yep.
So from the sounds of it, you look for one principal person to come on board who's a technical expertise and try to absorb as much as they can. How would you, have you got an idea in mind about what their role is, or what their title would be, or what kind of skills that one person would need?
Well, I think it's where we want to drive this business. It's not a single set of skills. It's going to be a wider awareness in the app mobility world. So to say that, I probably will need 2 to 3 people to bridge that gap 100%. But to start off with, I'm looking more someone who can take over the day-to-day technical testing and driving that technology background to the next 12 to 18 months for our sustainability. Although the platform, I understand, is sustainable, but of course we need that technical lead to be able to bridge that gap for us as well.
And what is the urgency of getting this person in the business?
I wanted somebody yesterday.
Yep. So given that there will be some issues, to say the least, with recruitment in terms of finding this person and convincing them to come on, because they're basically going to have to come on taking a slightly less salary than what they would get in the commercial world. So they have to believe in the idea, potentially get some form of equity.
Yeah.
So in the time it takes to find that person, which could be a few months, it could be 4 months, would it be helpful to you if you had someone who could fulfill like a virtual CTO service? So just come in and assist. in the meantime while you hire this person, and maybe even help hire that person?
That's definitely one of the things I'm looking at as well, to get somebody in the interim to be able to drive and bridge that gap until I find somebody who's full-time into this business. Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And that's something I'm looking again in Australia or Sydney, perhaps even better. Because again, I want somebody to be sitting right next to me when I'm talking about technology and the business going forward. From I can do the commercial aspects of things, I can do the future aspects of things, but of course we need to drive that in the technical aspects also at the same time. So that's something I'm looking at, as you said, about a virtual CTO. There are lots of enablement options that we have as a startup at the moment, but again, it's also defining who is it and how we go for it. Yeah.
Just digging into how you go about raising money and how engaging with these VCs, what's the process? So when you decided to go down the route of meeting VCs, what was your thought process? How did you engage them? How did you know where to find them? How much did you want to raise, and what were you willing to give away?
Look, Abs, the VC investment is, if you look at from a technological company perspective, that's the first thing which comes to mind every time, anytime someone talks about startups, that I'll build a prototype or I'll build a dream or a model or a concept, and I'll look into investments in time. And I think that's one of the things I looked at too. To start off with, there are different stages of a startup. A stage where you can go to VCs with a concept and a dream and they tap into that. A stage where VCs will look into a product. Or the third stage, in my view, would be that you've done it, whatever you had to do by yourself, and you've launched it and you are getting the numbers at the same time, so usage, the downloads. I'm at a second stage of that, where I didn't feel, or I shouldn't say I didn't feel, I did feel the importance of going to seed capitalization and getting somebody to fund the dream. But at that point in time, I wasn't 100% comfortable to give up the stake I would have had to. If I would have looked at seed capitalization investments at that point in time as a startup, rather than investing my own 150K, I'm looking at easily give away about 20% of the company for a price of 100K perhaps. But today, the market dynamic is different. I'm at the second stage where I have developed the app out of my own expense, and now I'm looking more of an incubation or a venture capitalist to come in and invest into that business for a less stake, perhaps 10%. If I look at an incubation for about up to 100K investment into the business. I'm also, again, yes, I am researching a lot of top Sydney and US and Hong Kong, everywhere, venture capitalists. But at the same time, I'm also considering the fact that I now have a product. What's the first thing, the challenge which will present to me is there's all the reasons where VCs could say or ask for numbers. That you have a product, show us the downloads. So it presents different sort of challenges. So I'm also considering the backup plan where I do have no backing from any VC and now need to focus on purely downloads. And I'll let the VCs come to me rather than, it's a big thing to say VCs come to me, but again, dreams are important. And get that download number month by month incrementals over the next 12 months.
Right. So let's say, for example, you decide not to take, or you take a small amount of VC money and you need a certain amount for marketing as well as
Sure.
tech. What are your other options? Have you considered a bank loan or any other ways of getting money? Any government grants, for example?
Yes, government grants is one thing I'm looking at also. But interestingly, if you look at the government grant web pages, the first thing they ask you is, are you associated to any incubators? And they've got the top list already available.
Right.
So yes, of course, I've researched all those aspects also. When you put in there no, of course, your chances of getting recommended or getting further up in your food chain are quite limited. You have to be associated in this world to, of course, some sort of investment company or a venture capitalist company to be able to get your brand where it belongs.
So it's important to get some form of VC interest to have other options open.
Absolutely. Bank loans are not going to work very well. Banks are only good, in my view, as far as you've got a 9-to-5 job and you get paid well. So, which I don't at the moment. So, in fact, they'll be worried at the moment.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess out of all the VCs available, what was your process of filtering, or I'm imagining still filtering, or what's the process you go through to find the one that's right for you?
Look, for me, it's very important to get the mutual understanding with whoever I work with. I mean, it's important that it's not in interest of myself only. It's not in the interest of VC only. It's all about people. It's all about development, because I see this product developing to be, at least my personal target is this company from 1st April 2017, 5 years, market capitalization of at least $1 billion. So that's what I'm working towards. And it's an ambitious thing. I agree with that. I'm looking at 1 million downloads, yes, but it's a combination of people who will make it happen. So I need the right support and the right enablement to be able to get to those numbers.
So it's not a purely financial driver picking the VC. It's not just how much money per equity.
It can't be. In my view, it just can't be. Financial side of things, I would have definitely gone for a seed capitalization to the business rather than looking at investing in it myself. So it's a combination of people and the vision and the values. It's very important in any business.
Well, thanks, Randeep. I guess we'll just wrap it up there, and
Sure.
Thanks so much for your time. But I guess just as a takeaway, what are the 3 things that you found worked the best, and I guess what are the 3 things you struggled with the most?
To start off with, Abs, the ones I'd say the best ones were the budget I had allocated towards the development. I stayed within the remit of that development. That did mean compromising a lot of my personal time, where I had to be working 24/7 really to get that app up and running. The other aspect which worked well is the product is now stable. Through the development, I did experience lots of crashes and lots of challenges, which, not being from a technical background, I was struggling with. First, lots of negative things go in your head. Is this going well? Have I engaged the right team? Have I got the right people working, developers working on it? And on top of that, you can't even see them. So that was definitely a problem and an opportunity. It worked well for me at that point in time. In terms of the challenges, if I could do it again, definitely I would engage a technical person, a CTO to start off with, for sure. I would definitely look into getting perhaps more investment to start off with, and then I can at least get the app developed onshore.